Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we are going to talk about the 10.40 aim assist changes, controller versus keyboard and mouse, all that jazz. But before we jump into the discussion, make sure you follow me over at twitter.com/Krashy, where I post all of these thoughts pretty much instantaneously because I can't help myself and I crave social interaction, as well as subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. If you want to support me, I would definitely appreciate it. Now, first and foremost with this discussion, I want to go on ahead and say that I need to clarify that controller players are not my enemy. I have, no ill will toward controller players. I don't really care what input you're using, what peripheral you're using, but in terms of this argument, I definitely lean on the side that aim assist is overpowered and should be nerfed to some degree, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about kind of like the culture of controller and the history of controller versus keyboard and mouse in gaming and in esports. So, strap in. I think it's all very relevant. I think it's all something that, it should be understood. And, it's an interesting discussion to have, as I've had back and forth talks, for the past couple of days now, or for, like day and a half now, with this new update in aim assist in general, and just even the previous iteration of aim assist. To me, it's simple to see that aim assist is overpowered, and it's been overpowered, dating back to PAX days when Aiden really first showed off the L2 spam, which I will agree, L2 spam over time was getting shadow nerfed. It just didn't look as aggressive. We go back and watch the PAX VODs of Aiden spamming L2. It was really, really aggressive, but nonetheless, it doesn't really change the overall effectiveness of just regular aim assist with tracking. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, some of the clips that I see coming from controller players, and I'm not just talking about the creative clips where people are just standing still beaming someone off a launch pad. I'm talking about some of the real in-game clips that I see from controller players. It's literally cheating. I don't know what else to say. To achieve that level of aim consistency is really, really hard on a mouse and keyboard, or on a mouse. And I'm not saying that's impossible, and I know a common argument is oh, well, you see players like Frosty ZK and Mongrel do this all the time. It's yeah, but you're naming two of the best players in the world, you know what I mean? You're naming some of the 0.001% players in the world versus the majority player base, or even just a large player base of controller players, because I'm not going to pretend every single controller player is actually good at the game. It's just not the case. But the argument that comes up when talking about aim assist being overpowered, and there's a couple, and I need to run through them, and then again, like I said, I want to jump into the history of controller and keyboard. But arguments that I see are the constant, you have your whole arm, you have scroll wheel reset, you have more keybinds, and I want to go ahead and just debunk all of this. Nobody out there is saying that controller is better than keyboard and mouse. That's really not the argument at all. You have to if you're a controller player and this automatically puts you into defense mode, you have to really understand our position. Nobody is saying that controller is better. And the other thing I see a lot is if it was so much better, why aren't you swapping the controller? Nobody's saying that. Nobody is saying that the controller is better. What we're saying is that the controller aim is better, and that it's free and it takes minimal effort. And for people that actually train their aim, for people that play on mouse and keyboard, and it's a manual movement to move your hand. The aim is all you. It's manual. It just doesn't make sense. It's literally like I said, it's literally cheating. So again, to reiterate, nobody wants to swap to controller. No keyboard or mouse player wants to swap over to controller unless it's a meme. So yeah, nobody, I don't know if that means you win that part of the argument. I don't know if that means I've debunked part of that argument. It doesn't really matter, but I just want to get that part out of the way. I don't want to swap to a controller. I don't want the aim bad enough to swap to a controller. So yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. But to kind of jump back in time a little bit, as far as I can remember, keyboard and mouse has always been better than controller. It just has. In every game I've ever seen, If there was a crossplay game out there, or if people were using things like Zim or keyboard and mouse on PS4 and stuff like that, people didn't want to play against it. It was a really big discussion back in the Overwatch days. I actually have a video on this channel talking about mouse and keyboard on Overwatch because it was a problem. People didn't want to play against mouse and keyboard players because it was a huge advantage, because mouse and keyboard players it's a better input, and that's not even like a subjective discussion. Like it's just an objective fact that a mouse and a keyboard is a better peripheral. It's a better input for gaming than a controller will ever be. It literally is more versatile. And the reason why it's a problem in Fortnite is because Fortnite is specifically developed in this cross-play inclusivity model. Like, they want everybody to be able to play. They want everybody to be able to compete. They always just say, like in the broadcast, they're always talking about how, like, you can play, you can compete, you can make it to World Cup, this. And that's the vision of Fortnite, but it's caused them to very strongly tune aim assist, and I mean, for good reason. They're trying to get controller players to keep up with mouse and keyboard. And again, I'm gonna go ahead and say it outright: mouse and keyboard will never be rivaled by controller. It just won't. That's why you only see a handful of controller players making it to the top. And to those controller players, the ones that are consistently placing high, especially the ones that are placing higher than me, because there are a lot of players that place way higher than me. I'm nothing special. Those players are insanely talented. So I'm not saying they're not skilled, but at the same time, I'm going to remind them and anybody listening that a lot of the aim that comes along with that skill is free. It is just free. You have to do a little bit of work to achieve a very strong outcome. And to achieve that on a mouse and keyboard is just very hard. But to jump back to the discussion that, the specific talking point we were just having, mouse and keyboard has always been better than controller. It's better than controller in every single way. It's the reason why console esports exist. I mean, Call of Duty, people, I saw this argument today. Call of Duty, if you plugged in a mouse and keyboard in Call of Duty, it was considered cheating. Yeah, of course it was. It's because it's that much better. Of course it's considered cheating. Activision doesn't even allow PC players or mouse and keyboard players to compete in the professional circuit. That's why there are no professional PC players in Call of Duty. That's why the Call of Duty PC scene doesn't really thrive. It's on a lot of titles the game dies on PC because they can't sustain a market. You know what I mean? Like they don't sustain a player base on PC because there's nothing going on PC. And for Gears of War, the same thing happens. Like the Gears of War PC market, it doesn't exist. Halo has never even been on PC. I mean, for a lot of the console exclusive esports that I can think back in time and name, they've always been dominated by console. But that's not because the input was better. It's because PC and mouse and keyboard just weren't allowed to compete. And the same thing's going on in Gears 5, and I was actually talking about it on Twitter recently. In Gears of War 5, you have to be on an Xbox to compete in the circuit or tournaments or whatever the qualifiers they have going on. And so again, I mean, it's the same thing. These are console esports, and Fortnite is the only game out there breaking the mold. And so, when I was talking on Twitter yesterday, one of the main talking points of my discussion was, you have to ask yourself, why is this the only game that controller players are even close to keeping up? And it's because of aim assist. I mean, it just is. It's because the aim assist is so heavy that there's an advantage that slightly tips the scales. Now, the hard part of this discussion in general is, if someone was to come to me and say, well, Krashy, don't you want us to be able to keep up? Man, I don't know. I don't know, because on one hand, you can't anyways. You know what I mean? On one hand, a controller literally can't keep up with a mouse and keyboard. You don't have the inputs that we have. You don't have the freedom that we have. And if the only way to tip the scales is to give you aim assist, well, then that's just stupid on both sides, because you're not really working that hard to get impeccable aim, and we're out here getting destroyed and beamed down. I mean, everybody's getting destroyed and beamed down by controller players, and it's just kind of stupid overall. So yeah, I want you to be able to keep up and compete, but at the same time, it's is that really fair? Is that really the most balanced way to do it? I don't know. I don't really think there is a way to do it. That's the whole point. So I'm not sitting here saying that I think aim assist should be nerfed. it just depends on the goal. It depends on the goal, and if the goal is the inclusivity model, then it can't get nerfed. And I've said it before, they can't get rid of this kind of aim assist in the game if the goal is to have controller players be relevant and competitive, because controller players are already struggling to be relevant and competitive. And again, this is another part of the discussion that gets totally like hidden and never talked about. What if I could throw a fake percentage out there, what percentage of controller players are even on PC? Because we'll go ahead and get this part of the discussion out of the way. Console players are irrelevant, and I hate to be that aggressive, but in terms of competitive, you don't have the machine that PC players have, controller or mouse and keyboard, to keep up. You just don't. It's gonna be, I think there was one person in all of FNCS that qualified for like the finals or the heats or something on a console. And to that person, oh wow, you know what I mean? Like, that's very impressive. And to the people that placed like within the top 10 of the Xbox Cup, that's very, very impressive. I mean, granted, those players are playing against just console players, but still, they're the best console players out there for sure, at least on their platform, because it was an Xbox Cup. But again, yeah, like we, so what percentage of controller players are actually on PCs? Because that does make a difference when talking about the discussion. Of course, it's going to be a mouse and keyboard dominated esport when 95% of the player base that is competing and placing well is on a PC. So not with a mouse and keyboard, just on a PC. Like, I don't think it's more than 95%. It's like 99.9% of placing competitors are on PC, regardless of what peripheral they're using. So that's another thing that doesn't really get talked about a lot. It's not a popular statistic to bring up, because first of all, we don't have the data on it. At the end of the day, you have to be objective with like what's going on here. And like, what's going on here is this: the controller is an inferior input. It's not meant to keep up. And Fortnite is the only game that's pushing this inclusivity model to allow players on controller the chance to compete. And if that's the goal, then I'm going to tell you guys right now, I don't really think anything should change. And I'm not out here giving my opinion because I want to drive change. I'm out here giving my opinion because that's what I do. I like to talk about things. I like to, share perspective from my eyes and from, my walk of life. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't want to make controller players my enemy. I have no intention of, making you guys irrelevant or making you disappear or just not being in y'all's camp. You know what I mean? Like, I am a friend to all. But I do want to talk about the facts, and the fact is this is the only game. This is the only one. You won't find another esport outside of maybe Rocket League, and someone brought that back up to me recently, where Rocket League is like a PC esport, but it is dominated on controller. But I think that's just such an exception, because you're driving cars around hitting a soccer ball, so I don't really care about that. But you're not going to find an esport that is cross-platform with these dual inputs, where controller players are just popping off. You're just not going to find it, and Fortnite's really the only one, and I think we all know why. So that's pretty much my discussion. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. I mean, I just think there's some objective truths here, and to kind of recap on that, it's like in the history of mouse and in the history of esports, mouse and keyboard have been the better input. In the history of console esports, Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War, mouse and keyboard were never given the ability to take over those platforms, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. That's just, those are console exclusive esports. With PC shooters, they're dominated by mouse and keyboard, and most games haven't even really hit the crossplay world to begin with. A lot of games really don't even press into that world, so you just don't even really get a reason for that. And I think randomly, just it pops into my head now as I'm talking, I'm thinking back to like Smite, and I'm pretty sure Smite and Paladins, both made by Hi-Rez, I'm pretty sure both of those games have a PC esport and a console esport side to them. So yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's just these worlds don't really mix, and Fortnite is the one game where they mix. And if you want to know why, it's because of aim assist. And I don't know, like I said, I've seen some of the clips, man. I've seen the clips, and I'm telling you that the aim is cheating. Like, it's like we can't do that easily. And for the people on mouse and keyboard that are capable of doing that, you're talking about a very, very tiny percentage of players that can achieve that kind of consistent skill. And even if they do achieve that same result, it's like it took them so much effort to do it. So it just kind of sucks to get beamed like that for free. And I don't know, it is what it is, I guess. If it never gets changed, it is what it is. And you know, I'm still not swapping inputs. I'm still gonna play on my mouse and keyboard because, like I said, we know it's the better input. Everybody in this discussion knows it's the better input, and I think that's why it's easy to argue for controller as well, because we're not out here giving up any of the other great features that we have on mouse and keyboard. We're just simply trying to explain, or at least me, I'm trying to explain why aim assist is as strong as it is and is pretty broken. But that's my opinion. Hopefully you guys will respect it. And again, I'm not your enemy. I'm just out here spitting my perspective. So thanks for checking out this video. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think? Like what do you think? I mean, about it all. Like, what do you think about the history of mouse and keyboard? What do you think about this inclusivity with Fortnite, where it's a cross-play developed game where the whole point is that anybody can play and achieve success? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for checking out this video. Please do not leave without leaving a like. I appreciate it again, and I'll see you on the next video.
Do you feel your bones start to shake? Do you feel the earthquake? Do you feel the fire inside of me? Do you see the sparks that I'm setting free? Does the beat take you over?